guys, and welcome back to the Movie-Club Emporium. And we are at the first week of our Halloween horror month. And this month we are doing something special because growing up, one of my favorite things were scary stories. I'm old enough to have grown up with scary stories to tell in the dark, things like Goosebumps, Afraid of the Dark, all these great anthology scary stories, which I'm glad to kind of see has kind of grown with the internet, with stuff like creepypasta, and you can see stuff like this on TikTok now. That's really kind of cool that this still carries on. But it should be no surprise then that one of my absolute favorite subgenres in horror is the anthology film, because you're more bang for your buck. You get a lot of horror in a nice little easily digestible hour and a half, 2 hours setting. Um, even in novel form, as we if you have been with myself or Nick or this channel long enough, you know of our love for Stephen King, and as much as I love those big chunky novels, his short stories stuff has always spoke to me more. And so I'm a huge fan of anthologies. So this month, for all of Halloween Horror Month, we're going to be covering some new and some forgotten and maybe some sadly slept on anthology films. And we're covering all decades, worldwide, and even the difference between great anthology films and probably some not so great anthology films. But I wanted to make sure we kick this thing off with a bang, and so this week, we are going to be starting with the literal newest of these anthology films, because we are talking about the newest entry in what has actually turned out to be, despite a hiccup with the third film, a pretty solid anthology series. We're talking about VHS Beyond. Now, again, VHS 2, I think, are great uses of the found footage in anthology film storytelling. VHS Viral, not so much. That I'm not sure quite what happened with that. And because of that, we were dormant for several years until Bloody Disgusting and Shudder picked it back up. And we have the year trilogy with 94, 99, and 85. And this is our newest, we're doing something a little different here, because this is VHS Beyond, and each of these stories is going to have a heavy, heavy dose of sci-fi in it. Now, do all stories in this film, live up to that sci-fi moniker? We'll get into it. But as we will do with all of these films, it's so much easier just to break these things down entry by entry, and this will be no different. So we're going to talk about this segment by segment. I am going to try to keep this as spoiler light as I can. It is streaming on Shudder. Do yourself a favor and go check it out. I highly recommend it. This is an all-around solid entry in the VHS series. I really enjoyed it. I don't think there is a bad story really in the whole movie. I think some are more fleshed out than others. And we'll see a theme running throughout not only the VHS films, but all the movies we're going to cover, starting with our first entry, which is our wraparound, which honestly is the weakestly developed of the film. There are 6 segments. This one being, to me, is the weakest. However, I still did enjoy it. Our wraparound is called Abduction. It is directed by pull up my notes here. Jay Chill, who's director and writer on the Cursed Films docuseries that's also on Netflix, which is a really interesting oftentimes very sad series that's going. I believe the third season is going to be coming out soon. Um, this one is very documentary esque, which I like. Think of something kind of like the Poughkeepsie tapes, or maybe even something like Lake Mungo, if you really want to get into it, where we have essentially what is a documentary about a mystery around this house where this Chinese immigrant family lived. And we have a few talking heads, one of which is a very much kind of is dressed up to be like the Zach Bagans of Alien abductions. I was very surprised to see real life interneters, the Corridor crew, at Corridor Digital, show up in this segment as somebody who kind of debunks fake alien and UFO videos, coming at it from a special effects type of way. I really enjoyed them popping up here. It was really surprising. Um, Again, this one is kind of the weakest of all the stories, as which is the case with a lot of times with the VHS series, and I think it's because um, it isn't given because it is cut up as the wraparound. You don't, and it's a wraparound that doesn't really wrap into the other stories. Like it's just a story. It's a story they picked to chop up and put the other segments in between, and so it makes this story very choppy. I will say this though, it has an ending that is just absolute nightmare fuel. If you've ever seen the documentary The Nightmare, or some of the stuff you would see in creepypasta, the ending of this segment is harrowing, and it's just some of the most nightmarish imagery uh, in the series. So our first full-on story is Stork, written and directed by Jordan Downey, apologies, who gave us the, I guess you could call them movies. It's the Thanksgiving films. Uh, this one is wild. It's a mix of like body cam footage, and it's very, very, very video gamey about a group of cops that go into this house to try to rescue some abducted children, and just what takes place is uh, images and scenarios directly out of some video games. Like I kept thinking about like Outlast or Resident Evil 7. And it culminates in what maybe the new Ratma, if you remember that story from '94, with this character, this big bad, and it is utterly utterly wild. This one's fun. I guess this one is kind of a light on story as well, and has an ending that's kind of like goofy, but it's so much fun. It's so much just balls to the wall, first person horror video game shoot 'em up. That makes it a lot of fun, and it's a great one to kind of come out the gate with for this documentary. Up next is one called Dream Girl by Virat Pal, and this is our foreign language entry, and it's really cool because it takes place in Mumbai with a couple of paparazzos. I believe his name is Sudu and Arat. I pronounce those terribly, and I apologize. But it's a very interesting world because you don't see a lot of horror here in America set in places like Mumbai and India. The very famously the closest we've probably seen here in the States, and I say we is because I've seen it, but probably none of the rest of you have, is the movie Hiss, which is a Bollywood, a legit horror film set in the world of Bollywood, that was directed by Jennifer Lynch, David Lynch's daughter, about a giant snake lady. We are with another femme fatale in this one, because these paparazzos are following around she's known as the Dream Girl goddess Tara. who's kind of like the queen of movies and songs. A very Tay Swift type maybe situation. Anyway, they go to try to sneak and get an interview with her. Um, you do see her filming this scene. It's a good use of the cameras because you're seeing they're kind of like hidden cameras, but you're also seeing the film cameras. And it's this amazingly well done Bollywood number with some very striking lyrics uh, that kind of, as the kids would say, slaps. It's kind of great. Um, and then we get where everything goes off the rails. It's essentially, think demon fembot Frankenstein turning on his creator type scenario and run amok. The last third of this story is utter just blood soaked chaos. Uh, it's wild. It's so it gets so crazy so fast. Um, it's a lot of fun. It doesn't. I don't want to compare it to things like Safe Haven or anything like that because that's not fair. But this is really cool to see this corner of the world get a representation in the horror anthology series, which is really cool. And then the third and probably honestly my favorite segment in the series is called Live and Let Dive. And it is directed by Justin Martinez, who did Southbound as well as worked on the original VHS. This is the most simple of setups for a story, and it absolutely is, again, the most effective one. It's absolutely my favorite. Um, and this one is about a birthday skydive with a plane full of friends. And while in the air getting ready to skydive, their plane is attacked by a UFO and aliens, which leads to uh, a huge fear for me. I'm not a heights man at all. Being on top of tall ladders is a no go. So the idea of first person falling out of an airplane as it's being attacked by an unidentified creature and spacecraft is harrowing. And that's kind of the first half of it, and then it ends with this incredible kind of stalk hunt through this apple orchard. And it's an apple orchard in the middle of the day, and there's utterly terrifying. There's an incredible jump scare toward the end of the story. Uh, and this one I just loved. Like, again, it's the most simple of setups, and it's carried out masterfully with these amazing looking creatures. The effects of just the idea of this guy jumping, falling out of an airplane that's been attacked is harrowing, especially if you're scared of heights. So this one was hands down kind of my favorite of the whole series. Up next is Fur Babies. This one's directed by Justin and Christian Long. Yes, that Justin Long. And this is the only one I dock because it's the least to do with sci-fi. It does feel like a really good entry. You honestly could have put this one in any of the other VHS movies, and I think it still works. Because the sci-fi-ness of it, to me, isn't there as forward as it is in the other stories. This one is about a couple of animal activists. I can't remember what they call themselves. They're about like treat animals, dogs against bad humans or something. They're trying to take down this eccentric woman who's running this dog boarding house, and without getting too into without getting into spoilers for it, let's just say Justin Long pulls a lot from his time working on the movie Tusk, and we'll say no more. This one, again, this was a fun entry leading to some wild imagery, and I think it's up there with, could have been probably the highlight of any of the other VHS entries. It's just weird to be on this one because it feels so less sci-fi than um, the other stories. But again, it's a great story. And then our last story, this is kind of the big one that everybody has been waiting for. This is Stowaway. It's the directing debut of Kate Siegel, uh, the actress, phenomenal actress in things like Hush and Midnight Mass and The Haunting of Hill House. And it's written by her husband, Mike Flanagan. Uh, this one, you definitely know why they save it for last. It's about a woman in the Mojave Desert. She's making a documentary about mysterious lights in the sky, and she becomes a stowaway on a craft that leads to utter and total Cronenbergian ramifications, and it's haunting and sad. There's just little glimpses of like that classic like Flanagan emotional weight that you just get little nuggets of in the story that you just like, man, if they dig into that, man, it would rip your heart out. But instead, it goes full on body horror. It's an incredible original look at a spacecraft. Um, Honestly, I was watching it thinking, going back to short stories and adaptations and things. I really would like to see somebody tackle Stephen King's The Jaunt. If you want a fun sci-fi horror story written by one of the best, I definitely recommend The Jaunt. It will mess you up. It's a wild story. But overall, again, I think this is a super solid entry in this franchise. I love 94, 99, kind of disappointed a little bit. I thought 85 was great. Definitely back on target. I put this one up there with those first two. And like 94. I this is definitely top 3 of the 6 for me. Again, there's not a real weak story. The weakest being the wraparound, but that's kind of always the case in all these things. And again, the way that wraparound ends, like as you end the movie, is some of the most like not. I'm trying not to have to see that um, when I go to bed tonight. So even that holds up. I think this is a fantastic entry. I am very curious to see where we take the VHS franchise next. I do like that we got a bunch of directors here that were either only known for doing shorts or working on other anthologies or flat out first time filmmakers. You like to see the big names pop up every now and then, and maybe, of course, the one story carried the weight of its writer more than the direction of its director. But I would like to see kind of some names come and get some opportunities. That's what you can do with this franchise. So I'm glad that they're coming out every year around Halloween. So I can't wait for the next VHS, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys about the rest of all the anthologies we're going to talk about. We have so many stories to discuss throughout the entire month. Now the opposite, the month of October. So join me for the entire month. Again, we are doing these anthology stories all month long. Next week, we are covering a made-for-TV television pilot anthology, and one that I remember renting on VHS, and one that kind of feels like it's been lost to time. But the cast in it is just too good to pass up. Plus, just seeing Christopher Lloyd with a red-headed bowl cut, you can't not check it out. So next week we are talking about Quicksilver Highway, where we do tackle some King adaptations as well as some Clive Barker stories. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then again, for the rest of the month, we are covering anthology films. So you do not want to miss every Sunday as these new episodes go up. And don't forget to like and do all the YouTube stuff. The algorithm demands it. Hell, algorithm. like, subscribe, share. Let's keep some numbers growing. Let's get some engagement. That's always good. We like to engage with things. And I will see you guys next week as we dive even deeper into spooky story season with Quicksilver Highway. Until then, read some short stories. Also watch some spooky stuff, man. And then I will see you guys next week. Bye.